Welcome back to the Family Movie Night podcast, episode 13. And today we are discussing the horror movie, A Quiet Place. And in honor of that, we are here talking about what crunchy food could you not help yourself but eat, and then, of course, be destroyed by living in the Quiet Place universe. So even in the midst of an apocalypse where you cannot speak or make any sound, you would have to eat this crunchy food. Donnie Dorsey, what would be your answer?
It's going to be either Ruffles chips, like the Ruffle wavy chips, or tortilla chips all day. Like you're
just a chip maniac.
I am. I'm a chip maniac. I'm going to be like, if it's my life or the chips, I'm going to be well fed, and they're going to have to take me out.
I get it. Mine is 100% Popeye's chicken, crunchy as all get out, but man, I can't help myself. Even I've stopped eating meat, but once a quarter, so 4 times a year I eat meat, and it's a Popeye's chicken. I said I gotta give up meat except for 4 times a year I can eat Popeye's chicken. So in the Quiet Place, something would have to come out and swipe my head off for trying to eat that Popeye's chicken. And Sawyer Hewlett co-hosting with us as always, the villain of this podcast. What would you have to eat?
Oof, probably popcorn. I would get caught eating popcorn for sure, and then it'd be done because or bacon. I guess bacon kind of counts because cooking that gets loud. But
that's true.
I cook bacon pretty regularly, and that would probably the bacon would probably get me killed first.
I will say I saw this movie in theaters, and that of course was the struggle that every person in the theater had, was in the quiet moments. Do I eat my popcorn? And you're trying to open it or open up my candy bag really. And what you do is you end up opening it just really slowly, so the sound just goes even louder.
Yep. I was sitting next to my roommate in the theater who was eating a snack, and I was like having a conversation. I was like, "Can you shut up, man?"
Welcome to the Family Movie Night podcast, where we want to help your family have better conversations around the content you consume. My name is Nathan, and I'm joined as always by my co-hosts Donnie and Sawyer. Our other co-host Heidi was not able to be here with us today for the recording, but we are so excited to talk about this movie, A Quiet Place. Before we get to that, Donnie, what do we do on this podcast?
Yeah, so on this podcast, we encourage every family at Community Christian Church to have a monthly movie night to help you and your children build memories, start conversations that matter. And the goal of our family ministry is to help you to raise your children to love Jesus and his way of life above all other things. And we know that critical to that is for you to have a routine, regular time of connection and some shared experiences that'll help you build stronger relationships.
Yeah, and like movie nights, we think are a great opportunity to do that, because movies are not just an opportunity to share laughter and joy and even fear and sadness in a safe environment, but they also give us a chance to talk about what matters the most to us in a way that's meaningful and memorable with your children and stuff like that. And on this show, we want to recommend some movies that you could watch on your monthly movie night, but also, give you some ideas of meaningful conversations you could have with your children during or especially after the movie.
And as always, the goal of this podcast is not just to add one more thing of your list of things that you are not doing as a parent that you have to feel guilty about. We really want to help you make it easier to be at home with your family and to build memories and to share conversations that really matter. And we want that to be this way. So we're going to try and keep it fun, even though we are talking about this is the first horror movie. I think it's safe to call this a horror movie, right?
Yeah, easily. I mean, because there's definitely some jump moments.
Yeah. So this is the first horror movie we are talking about. I will say it's PG-13, primarily I think just for the horror elements to it.
Yeah.
There's really not very much language at all. There's not certainly very much sexual content or anything like that in it, but it is a pretty scary, intense. I would call it more of a suspense thriller, even though it has monsters. And I didn't read the IMDb description because normally they're terrible, but this one's actually pretty good. So in case you don't know what it's about, it's a movie that is set in a post-apocalyptic world where a family is forced to live in silence while hiding from monsters with ultra-sensitive hearing, right? So you can't make any sound of any kind. And because these creatures will come and devour you. It is, I don't even know. Are they eating? Do we even get that? Are they eating people?
See, when they come in, like it looks more like if you're watching like that tackler from like in the office, like scenes where it's like, oh, I heard a sound. It's like, boom.
Yeah. Well, it is like, I mean, it is nuts. Everyone is, the only time you really see the monsters, you don't see them eating anything. Because I would say mostly it's a fairly even bloodless movie.
Yeah.
There are certain moments, but I would argue that maybe like Home Alone is a more like intense as far as the violence.
Oh yeah,
Home Alone is closer to a slasher than A Quiet Place.
It really is.
You see these moments where these creatures come, but they always come from the side as if they're like some kind of like tight end coming out, like it's just at this angle. They're like cut, and boom, they just kind of come in at the side. It's nuts. But I will say this. So this is a movie that came out in 2018, and I had in my head that this movie came out in 2015. It feels like ages ago that I went and saw this movie in the theater. But this movie came out in 2018. It was directed by John Krasinski. He had directed other things. So John Krasinski of Office fame, most likely, or maybe you're a what's the character he plays on the Tom Clancy character? Can't think of his name. Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan. Yeah.
Jack Ryan.
Good
so maybe
first season.
There you go. So, yeah, but he directed other stuff. This is certainly the most high profile thing he has directed.
Yeah.
And his wife, Emily Blunt, plays his wife in the film. And this movie made tons of money. I think one of the most profitable movies of that year because it was made for almost nothing. It's very kind of low budget, low cast, made tons of money. And let's just talk about it. You guys all saw it. I saw it when it came out. Donnie, you told me you did not watch it until this viewing. So
yeah.
Let's talk about this for a second, because I know a lot of people aren't horror movie people. Donnie, are you a horror movie person? And if not, or if so, how did this movie work for you?
I like suspense things. I like thrillers. I like things that kind of make me like kind of almost force my attention to the screen more regularly. Cause like sometimes you can watch a movie and like you can miss bits and pieces of it and it doesn't really take away from anything. But I feel like the absence of sound in this was actually what made in different parts of it made it even more intense because it made all the sounds that were made matter that much more, which made it even more intense. So I thought it was good. I mean, if you like thrillers, I think you'll enjoy it. I think it's definitely something that it falls in the horror category. I think primarily just because of the
monsters,
the monster thingamabobbers. Like that's about it. Because other than that, I mean, it's a thriller, but it's really well done though.
Yeah.
So.
Sawyer, what I know you went and saw this in theaters. You already said what are your feelings about this movie?
Yeah, I love this movie. So I have a complicated relationship with horror movies because, you know, when I was a little kid, all that I ever saw was like crappy horror movies.
So on your Facebook page, it just says Sawyer Hewlett horror movies. It's complicated.
Yeah, exactly. But no, like I only ever like early on, or like my first exposure to horror movies was like bad horror movies and stuff like that. Like the later like Jason and Freddy movies and stuff. Like they're just horrible movies. And then when I got older,
I just want to go ahead and say I take objection to those being horrible movies, but that's fine. Continue.
And so anyway, but you know, I got older and I started seeing other stuff, and I was, oh, horror is my jam actually. And A Quiet Place was like at peak Sawyer watching like art house horror movies. And I love this movie. It is one of, I think I have a very hot take. I think this is probably my favorite horror movie of the 21st century, if I'm being honest.
Whoa!
And so I love this movie.
All right. Well, let's talk about this. I also really enjoy this movie. I think it's great. I would also probably refer to it as a horror movie. We are primarily, go to IMDb, figure it out. You know your kids best. I don't really think, other than the fact that it's scary, there's anything so objectionable. All of my children have watched this movie. Sawyer asked me before. He was like, "Have your kids seen this?" I was like, yeah, they have. My wife and I are massive horror movie fans. I mean, massive, to the point that like, I don't think there are bad horror movies. I watch them all because whether they are like so stupid that they're funny, or whether they are genuinely terrifying, or whether they're those like really psychological, like that just messed me up in my head, horror movies, I think they work. And I will say this, primarily for the reason of they do give us space to deal with things. And we're going to talk about this in the themes of this movie. They give us space to deal with things that most of us don't want to deal with on a normal basis, which is our fears. What are the things that scare? Most of us want to stuff our fears down and hide them away. But horror movies give me a chance to kind of, why does that scare me? What would I do in a situation like that? How should I handle my fears? And so I really love them. Obviously, as a teenager, when I got into them, it was just, you got to see things in horror movies that you didn't get to see in other movies, right? So that certainly was a big part of it. But this one I felt like was a good kind of, for at least for my kids, because there's nothing really too objectionable. It's a fairly bloodless movie. Certainly you don't have some of the like sexual content you might have in other kinds of horror movies. This is a good one for them to kind of watch because it's just a monster movie. To me, it's no different. It's like an updated version of like Creature from the Black Lagoon or a Mummy movie, because they love the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, which are also very scary in parts. So, Donnie, were you going to say something about that?
No, I mean, I think it has all those elements. Like, I think it's like after watching it, I think there's some suspenseful moments, but I don't think there were moments where I'd go, okay, well, this might be a difficult movie for them to watch. I think at worst, the monster might be a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, it was just a lot of well done scenes pieced together in a way that was enjoyable. So,
yeah. So I think we would say at least, this would be a good movie for your middle or high schoolers. You know your kids well enough to know whether this would be too scary for them. I think probably come Halloween time, we might be watching some more kind of scary stuff, since that's when people get into that kind of stuff. But this is a really good entrance because not just is it just a well-made, tense, scary kind of movie, but in the way that horror movies do, this is really about something that's not about the fear. It's really about the idea of how we handle heavy emotions, fear. And in this movie, so spoiler alert, you're going to get all the spoilers. And this is right from the very beginning. This movie begins with a family losing a child. And it is in this very intense moment where it gets taken by one of these monsters. And this movie quickly becomes the monsters no longer kind of become this like fun, like, oh, when are they going to get them, to almost these agents of trauma and grief. And they become this symbol for how this family now has to deal with, how do we talk? How do we as a family move forward after this horrific, and genuinely horrific trauma, grief-inducing moment? And it becomes a movie about that. And like the title of the movie, and like that, it really becomes about how this family doesn't talk about their grief. They don't talk about the trauma they're experiencing. They don't talk about the fears they have. They just go, let's just keep moving. Let's keep moving. We've got to stay alive, right? We got to keep moving. Yeah. And because of that, there are difficult situations that come in. And so what we said is, really, this movie gives us a chance. And I remember having this conversation with my kids. We watched it sometime last year, right before the second one came out. And we had the conversation of, when bad things happen, we want to be the place where we can talk about those things, right? And that's what this movie becomes. So where did you guys see this? Donnie, I remember when we were talking before this started, you kind of kind of focused on the way that the dad, John Krasinski, really takes his role as protector to a level where it almost it becomes a problem almost for the family. So, Donnie, can you talk about that a little bit, of this idea of kind of protection, maybe even overprotection, and how we have conversations about that?
Yeah, because I think after like what you'd already talked about is like after their moment with the monster and the son, he really takes on the role of overprotection, like not even just protector. Like he's really focusing on, I have to protect them at all costs. And when he says at all costs, it means that at the emotional damage. It also means at the sometimes at the physical damage. Like they can't do certain things, and he finds himself constantly trying to justify the things he's doing, even though they are causing them some emotional damage. Because his relationship with his daughter becomes very stinted and very broken because there's a lack of communication, because he thinks that by sharing information with her, that's going to somehow make her less safe.
Yeah.
And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, and I think what we talked about before, and you said this, Donnie, which I think this movie's kind of this allegory for it, which is this family lives in a legitimate danger is around every corner.
Yeah.
I mean, danger is around every cough. You just cough. Every sneeze is possibly danger, right?
Yeah.
And danger's around every corner. But that families, parents in particular, we often kind of imagine ourselves in those kind of worlds. Yeah. Where our children are growing and our kids are in danger at every moment. And it is our job as parents. Obviously, it's our job as parents to keep our kids as safe as we can, to protect them when they can't protect themselves, all of those kind of things. But I think the point that this movie does well of making is he keeps his family safe. But what you see throughout the time is, and we'll just talk openly about it because hopefully you'll go watch this movie. But the reason that the younger son dies is at the beginning of the movie. It opens, and I love, they just drop you in on day 89 is all it says. And so you kind of pick up, it's been 89 days since something happened that kind of brought about the end of civilization as we know it.
Yeah.
And it's this family just kind of moving through this supermarket. They've gone to get, I think it looks like antibiotics for one kid that is got a sinus infection or something. They've gone to get medicine for him. And the youngest kid, who looks to be about maybe 3 or 4, finds this rocket ship toy.
Yeah.
And wants to take it. And that, by the way, is just one of the best filmmaking moments, when you see the family see him carrying something and the look on everyone's face is like, oh my, he found a gun. Oh, he found a knife. He's carrying a snake. And what he's carrying is a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is intense. It's just a good way of conveying that information without anyone having to say the reason that the rocket ship is scary is because it's going to make noise and then draw the creatures. So the dad says, you can't take the rocket ship. I know you want it. And he does in that moment. That's what I think is very interesting, is he fully communicates it. Yeah. He has a conversation with us look, it's not bad that you want this toy, but it's not safe for you to have this toy because it's loud.
Yeah.
And the daughter gives him the rocket ship, and but without batteries in it. But the little boy puts the batteries back in while they're walking. It starts making noise. He gets taken by the monster. And the daughter feels like the dad blames her for the death of the son. And they just know, they don't even really talk about it anymore. Sawyer, did you see any of those kind of connections of the relationship? Because you talked about that, the relationship between the dad and the daughter and kind of the miscommunication there.
Yeah. So he is just a textbook horrible communicator throughout this movie, because
we can just say it. He's just a dad.
Yeah.
He's just a dad. He doesn't know how to talk about stuff.
The question throughout the movie is, okay, does he actually love her, and has he forgiven her and stuff like the movie poses that question that it's asking. That being said, his actions indicate that at least on some level he does. Throughout the movie, he's trying to help her. So she's deaf is the thing. That's kind of the thing with her character arc throughout the movie, is she's a deaf character and played by a deaf actress wonderfully, by the way. And he's trying to make her a new hearing aid throughout the entire movie. And you put it together about near the end of the second act that is his vehicle for delivering his love. But she isn't that interested in it, okay? Not because like she's like morbid, but just because she thinks that he blames her for the death of their son. And so there's this communication tug of war going on.
Yeah.
And I love what I love is that he never stops trying. That's kind of like I view this movie with a lens of like perseverance. It's a lot about perseverance. And so he's trying to love her and he can't figure out what to do until there's a moment in the movie where he and his son that they have like 3 kids at the beginning of the movie. There's the middle child is their son, and they go and basically have a break for the movie. It's a moment where, as the audience, you can kind of relax, and they actually get to have a verbal conversation, and it's like it provides clarity for the dad, for John Krasinski's character, and then he like has the answer. And I don't know if we want to go into the ending, but there is a very cathartic moment that happens.
Go ahead. If it ties into what you're talking about, go ahead and
yeah. So, I mean, this movie is ultimately a tragedy, if we're being honest, because in his final moment where he gets to communicate his love to his daughter, that he loves her, it's very simple. He simply tells her with sign language that he loves her. That is the big catharsis. And in that moment, his 2 kids are being attacked by the monster. They're hidden in a truck. And then he lets out this super emotionally heavy scream. And the monster comes and swipes him off the screen. And I cry just thinking about it. So.
Well, and I think obviously the reason that works as emotionally well as it does is obviously sacrificial love. Anytime you see sacrificial love displayed, that's always a good opportunity for you as a parent to just say, hey, the reason that's so emotional, reason that works is because God designed the world to work in such a way that self-sacrificial love, a person, as Jesus says it, greater love is no one than this, that they would lay down their life for their friends. It points us back to Jesus as being self-sacrificial love. I will say, I think one downside of this movie, because I do think this movie is designed really with this to me is just a dad movie. It just feels like a dad movie. It's about a dad protecting his kids, willing to lay down his life for his kids, and that's very emotional. But what it really kind of does, because most of us, I'm going to venture 98% of dads are not going to be in a world with ultra sensitive hearing monsters trying to kill their family. I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory to say. I don't think you're going to end up in that world. So most likely you're not going to have to sacrifice yourself in that way. And what it kind of does in certain ways, and I think as parents, we have to be aware of this, and this is not necessarily a conversation for our kids, but something we can take from is we should not wait until we have some grand gesture we can do to communicate to our kids we love them. That's really the failing on his part, was that he's Sawyer was talking about all the things he did, but he really was communicating to his daughter, and she openly said, stop doing this. There's a scene in the movie where she goes, just stop. I don't want you to do this. And he's like, but I love you, and this is what love looks like. And it's like, but that's not what love looks like to me. And I know so many of us as parents, I am guilty of this, that I keep hammering the same nail with my kids going, this is how I would like to be told I'm loved. And they don't want to hear it. And that doesn't mean they're wrong. I'm the parent. I'm the adult. It's my job to go, what is it that you need? And she keeps saying to him, I want you to tell me why I can't go. And he's like, we're not talking about it. You just don't get to go. Stay home with your mom.
I think especially as a parent, like, and a lot of times as a dad, it is that we want to explain things, but sometimes we do it in a way of protecting them. It's like, well, if I explain this to you, then you're going to know about more of the possibilities of what could happen. And then it's a whole different ball game. I mean, it's like sometimes we want to create this safe world, but we treat the world like it's the most dangerous thing in the world. And so they go into the world fearing it rather than just playing it cautiously, and that's the hard part, because as a parent, you don't want your kids to be afraid to take risks or take chances. you want them to be aware that there are possibilities of dangers out there and to handle it appropriately. But like, and I think in this movie, he's trying to do it, but he doesn't know how to, because it's like the idea, like when you talk about like love languages, some people want to hear you tell them how much you love them, but others would like rather you give them a gift of some sort, you know, like, and so it's that difference. And he's like, well, I love you. Can't you tell? Because I constantly work on this project for you. And she's like, if you're not telling me why I hurt you or why you feel the way you do and you treat me the way you do, then it means nothing to me, you know? And so it's a very dynamic movie.
Yeah, because I think ultimately, and the monsters are really a small part of the movie. I bet. I mean,
they're background characters.
Most of the movie, the middle section of the movie is how this family deals with this tragedy. How do they deal with this? How are they moving forward? Because there's all of this stuff mixed into it. So Emily Blunt's character, the mother, you find out the child dies on day 89, and then it immediately cuts to like day 479 or something like that. It's been over a year since that has happened. And she's pregnant, and she's like 8 months pregnant. And she's about to give birth. And there's a lot of cool, just like world building of like how they're preparing for that. They have this soundproof crib with an oxygen tank. Like, it's just very kind of cool world building, how they're preparing for it. But there's even some of that that's going into it. You see at one point, at the end of the movie, the family home gets attacked by the creatures. And when she's getting attacked, she has gone up to that child's bedroom, the child she's grieving the loss of, because all of that's part of it. This new child is coming into the family after the death of this other child. All of those emotions are working it, and no one's talking about it. They're all just kind of dealing with it. And so here's the conversation I think that is so important for us to have with our kids when watching this movie. Some of the stuff we've already talked about, of perseverance, self-sacrificial love. But to me, the central thing that you're going to have lots of opportunities as you're talking about this is you can point to, hey, do you see how they're not communicating? Do you see how they misunderstand each other because they're not talking? Like, there's a scene where John Krasinski takes his son to the waterfall. I think we've already talked about it on here. And they're actually able to have a voice-to-voice conversation. And the son's like, you know, she thinks you hate her because she thinks you blame her for this other child's death. And he's like, I never have. I've always loved her. But that's an opportunity for you to say, do you see how they don't understand each other? And the reason why, and I mean, and this is the brilliance of the movie, they can't just have open conversations. Now, they know sign language and such. But it becomes about, hey, I want us, no matter what happens to us, right? No matter what happens to us in life, I want us to be able to be the place where we have these conversations. And even like, kind of like Donnie said and Donnie, I love this example you use of not being afraid, but being cautious. I would take it even farther. I think what we're trying to teach our kids is to be wise. And that fear doesn't even, there are certain things that are wise. Like, I say this to my kids all the time. Like, my kids love to climb trees and they love to do this, and they go up higher than I probably would feel comfortable with them. So what I often say is, look around you. Is it wise for you to stand on that branch? And then I'm now teaching them that, not that the world is a scary place, not that this, or we'll say that when we cross the road. Why is it unwise to cross the road without looking both ways, right? I'm not teaching you to be afraid of things. I'm teaching you that there are things in this world, that the world operates by certain rules. And if you jump off a building, something's going to happen to your body. So you should be wise and not do that. And if you just walk into the street without looking both ways, something's going to happen. It's not something to be scared of, it's something to be wise about. And if I can help my child to be wise about the world and to look around, but that requires them to have knowledge of the world. Because what ends up happening is, what we know often is the things we're afraid of, that isn't from wisdom. I'm afraid of some things that are irrational. You know what I mean? So do we want to talk about that for a little bit? How this movie can help our kids? Because once again, this is a scary movie. How can we talk about that idea of fear with our kids of, hey, there are things in this world that seem very scary, right? But how do we talk about that? Donnie, you got something to say?
So I was thinking about that. Like, for instance, I think I'm trying to think of something that my kids have like grown out of based on understanding it more. But there's various things. Like, I think you can talk to your kids about when they're dealing with something and they're afraid, have them kind of talk through it. Have them have a
Yeah.
conversation with you. Have them explain why it brings fear to them, why it makes them uneasy, or why it makes them uncomfortable. Because a lot of times, like you said, it's irrational. And sometimes it just takes talking through it to understand, oh, wait, I'm afraid because I thought something that didn't actually occur or was happening. It's like the idea when a child goes, hey, I'm afraid because that looks like something in my closet. It's like, well, how can we
Right.
eliminate this thought? It's like, you don't have to be unwise about it. You can be wise about it and go, okay, well, do you have anything in there that would be that size or that shape of in your closet? And like, oh yeah, I do have this particular thing. And then you walk them through that process, because I think those are the steps that we often give ourselves as we grow and get older, is to think through this. Okay, does this make sense? Or is this something that I haven't taken time to process?
Yeah. Well, and I think when you get to that, Donnie, and I think that's an opportunity for us. I think if we have really young kids, kids that are to 10 and younger, to be able to have the conversation of, like you're saying, of what our kids need to feel at that point is, hey, mommy and daddy are keeping you safe. Like, they don't need a 4-year-old doesn't need a full concept of the world.
Yeah.
Their concept of the world needs to be mommy and daddy keep me safe. God keeps me safe, right? Like, those ideas are important. But since we're talking about, this is a movie that you're primarily going to be watching with your older kids, I think the struggle often, and I have a kid who's a preteen now, entering closer to the teen years, and I'm aware she's going to be without me pretty soon, right? As far as like in her life every day, she's going to be able to drive a car. She's going to be able to go to college. She's going to be able to do all these different kinds of things.
Yeah.
And instead of overprotecting at that moment, the best thing I can do is to come in and go, hey, let's talk about what's the wise thing to do. What's the thing that honors God, honors other people? Like, those are conversations that fear, because once again, as we know from scripture, love drives out all fear. Perfect love drives out all fear. So there is no way for me to be focused on love and to be afraid. So I can look at things that are dangerous and I don't have to be afraid of them, right? I can look at them and say, okay, how can I be wise with that, right? Fire is dangerous, but it doesn't have to be scary. I can put it in my fireplace.
Yeah, because that's kind of like one of the things I think about when I'm like with my kids. I mean, I remember hearing the statement of like, I'm not raising this child at this age. I'm raising them to be an adult eventually. So
Right.
my thought is, a lot of times is, I want to give them tools. I want to give them the ability to make a better decision, so that if they don't have me around to make that decision, they go, okay, well, what dad was telling me about this is that I just have to look at these situations. Because I think often as parents, sometimes we wait too late to equip our kids with the tools to handle the world around them, because we spent so much time protecting them and staying in the role of like guard dog or protector, and not becoming the person that's going, okay, look, now I'm your guide. I'm your teacher, and I'm going to continue to give you things that will make you less dependent on me. Not because, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're going to say.
But not to like remove yourself from it, but to take a different role, because I think that's what happens, and that's where a dynamic shift happens in parental relationships with their kids, is that they didn't transition out of the role of, hey, this is my baby, to this is my child that's growing older and learning more about the world, and it will experience it with me at times, and sometimes without me.
So just to kind of wrap up this conversation here before we get into our lightning round, I think what Donnie's getting at there, that's huge. And I used to say this all the time when I would have conversations with older high schoolers a lot. We would have a group of juniors and seniors, and I would say to them all the time, hey, give your parents a break, because I know you sometimes feel like they're trying to control you. I know, you're 17, you're 18, and you want to be an adult and you want to have more freedom. And I would just say this, and maybe parents don't like this. I would just say, your parents are scared. That's just the truth. You're ready to be an adult, but they're not ready for you to be an adult. And just like this is your first time being an adult, this may be their very first time having a child that's an adult. And it's scary to put you out in the world. So try and give them a break. But you, because I'm talking to parents now, it's your responsibility to have that conversation and to be vulnerable enough to watch this movie and see a dad who's scared for legitimate reasons. There are legitimate reasons that he thinks the world is a dangerous place, and be able to have the conversation with your kids and say, hey, look, sometimes I make decisions and they are based out of fear, and that may not be the best choice for me as mom or dad. Can we start having more open conversations about why your curfew is at this time, or why I have rules about your cell phone usage, or why I want you to text me when you go someplace? Let's have conversations about what the wise thing to do is, because not having conversations with your 17 or 18-year-old is not going to make things better.
Yeah.
It is not going to make things better. Saying because I said so to a 17-year-old it's important as a 5-year-old, because I can't fully explain to my 5-year-old, who does occasionally get tablet time, and one of my 5-year-old occasionally likes to go on the internet. And we've had to tell them, nope, you lost your tablet time because you were supposed to stay on this app and you went to this. And I don't have to explain to them all the intricacies of what's on the internet.
Yeah.
I just have to say, you have to listen because I said so. That's not okay for a 17-year-old. You got to have a conversation. And I think this movie gives us a chance to say, no matter what the situation, we want to talk. We don't want our home to be a quiet place.
Yeah.
Pun intended. Okay, so let's get in here. I know we have a lot more we can talk about. We want to keep these as short as we can. So we're going to get into our lightning round. Anything you want to talk about this movie for 1 minute, whether it's another theme you want to bring out, one final thought you want to have about what the discussions we've been having, or just something about the movie that you thought was dope. Let's just talk about it. Let's give it to Sawyer first. Sawyer, lightning round, 1 minute. What you got to say?
Yeah, I want to talk about something that I just find to be incredibly, as you would describe, dope about the movie.
Yeah, dope, double dope sandwich.
There's two things I want to bring up. First off is the kid performers. One, the actress of Reagan, whose name is escaping me right now.
Millicent Simmons.
Yeah, Millicent Simmons. She knocks it out of the park in this movie, as well as Noah Jupe, the actor of The Son. Okay, they are awesome in this movie. Also, want to give a shout. I'm a big nerd for creature design, and this movie has one of the coolest looking monsters from a movie I've seen in a very long time. Gives off very big alien vibes, and I love it.
Yeah, very cool creatures. Very much, I love it. Reminiscent of xenomorphs from Alien. Love it. All right, Donnie, 1 minute. What do you want to say about this movie?
I mean, honestly, it's just a really good movie. There's so many good things from the acting, like you said, Sawyer. Like from the adult actors to the child actors, they are phenomenal. Like they carry the story. I love the fact that they utilize the idea of no sound in various parts that added so much more depth to the moments. Like I love how every moment was calculated. I love the scene of him at the waterfall, and then having that conversation and explain and it logically making sense to the context of the story. I love how he was at the pond and he was explaining how he was going to teach him how to do this, but you can't do it this loud because, and then like the kid, I love that dynamic of the kid talking to him going, well, why doesn't this work? Why can I do it here, but I can't do it there? And he's like, perfect. Like that aha moment. Because as a parent, I love those teachable moments. And like when they come up, I'm like, ooh, okay. Because I feel like I have wisdom to embark, and when they're engaged in it, it makes it like 100,000 times better.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have a full minute on mine. This may be the first time I don't have more to say than a minute on my lightning round. All I'm going to say is there are two moments in this movie where there are two adult men, John Krasinski's one another, that their way of just ending everything is to just go outside and scream into the abyss. And I go, man, there's nothing that sounds more like parenting than just having to spend the whole day with your kids and go stand on a car and scream into the abyss for a monster to come destroy you. So, but hey, seriously, we hope you guys watch this movie, and we hope you get to have some good conversations about why it's important for us as families to have conversations, because the whole goal of this is not just to share memories, and we think it's a great time to build memories with your kids, but also to have conversations that matter and to help your children understand that we do serve a God who keeps us safe, and that there is nothing to fear in this life because he is on our side. So good luck having conversations about this movie. We'll see you next time.